Welcome to stage 5 printing. In this video I'll be showing you how to get your print onto fabric. So now I want to show you the printing process. I've already put my gloves on. I've created my printing mat, which is at least 6 layers of newspaper. I've got a trial piece of printing paper there. I use newsprint, and I've got my reservoir for the ink, and I've got my roller, and I've got my lino cut ready to go. So I do the trial print because when your lino is new, sometimes the surface can be a bit slippery and you don't get a very good print. And even if I've used the lino before but I've cleaned it, I always do a trial print because it's a good way to troubleshoot, to make sure that the consistency of the ink is correct and that you've covered the whole lino when you're printing. So I'll now fill my reservoir with some ink, and it's important not to be too heavy-handed with the ink. You can always add more, but it's difficult to take out. So I load the ink at the end of the reservoir, and because I've got a brand new roller, I put enough ink there that I will get good coverage on my roller. And I've got my brand new roller here, and again I'll just mention that it has to be really dense foam. If you've got quite foam with quite a lot of holes, that will actually transfer onto your lino and transfer onto your actual resulting print. So everything that creates texture, whether it's your roller or a bit of debris, it will print or not print in the process. So it's really important to make sure that your equipment is clean and that there's nothing on the surface, and that you have these dense foam rollers. So to get the ink onto your roller is quite a slow process. You take little bits of ink because you don't want big blobby bits of ink sitting on your roller. And I've taken ink there. You can see there's blobby bits there. I need to roll that around to make sure that it doesn't sit as a blob on my roller. So I've still got space through there. I need to pick up a little bit in the center. It takes a little while to load a brand new roller because you can see that it doesn't impregnate through. But once you've got ink on the roller and you know you might be printing in the next few days, you can just load the whole tray into a Ziploc bag with the roller, and you don't need to wash them each time, because in a Ziploc bag the ink will stay fluid and the ink won't dry on the roller. So you can see I'm doing that quite slowly. I still haven't got quite enough coverage. I want to basically not have any of the yellows showing of my roller. And I might actually just turn it around to see if I can get a bit better coverage at the end. So again, you can see I've got blobbies now, and I've got to get rid of those blobbies. And I do that by rolling in this way. So one of the things that you'll see me doing is that I'm lifting my roller from time to time, and that's to rotate the actual roll bit so that it's not rolling on the same spot all the time. That I'm really trying to get rid of those blobs, and sometimes the best way to do that is to just lift, and then I actually check. I can still see a few blobs there, so I need to roll a little bit more. So I think that's looking pretty good. It's fairly even. So now we're set to go and roll it onto our lino. So I've got my lino here, and I make sure that it's on the spare sheet because I'm trying to keep my work surface clean, and that's really important because we're dealing with ink and it will print on anything. So when I roll my ink onto my lino, I do vertical strokes, And then I do horizontal strokes. And because this is a new roller, I think I need a little bit more ink. So I've done my vertical strokes and I do horizontal strokes because that makes sure I get good coverage of the whole lino print. It's possible to miss a little bit sometimes. And then I roll again around the edge. So now I'm ready. I just make sure that it's all applied evenly, and it is. So now I'm ready to print this. So my print is now ready to roll, and I pick it up carefully. And this is another reason for wearing gloves. And I lay it onto my trial printing surface. And I press it down a little bit in place because that will stop it from moving. And this is where I bring in my expert tool for printing. This is a wine bottle which obviously I've emptied, and I filled it with water. And the reason I use a wine bottle is because it's got a nice flat surface here. The weight with the water in the bottle is a really good weight for the pressure you need to apply. There are other tools that you can use, for example a brayer, but I actually have gotten really used to the wine bottle, and I like the pressure it gives. You can also get a little Japanese tool which is called a baron, which is a bamboo disc which you rub over the back. But because it's quite a small tool, and if you have a bigger lino cut, and because you're dealing with fabric, there can be movement. So I actually find this broadness of this bottle gives me a good coverage of the back of the lino cut. Now, some people always ask me, can't I use a rolling pin? And the reason I don't use a rolling pin is because the rolling pin you hold like this, so the pressure is at either side, and you actually need the pressure through the center. So I roll with my hands on that bottle, and I also push. So I'm holding my lino there, and I push quite hard, and I'm making sure the whole time that I'm not moving the lino. And then we'll just check to see what kind of coverage I've had. And you can see there that the print is a bit light on in areas, and that's because when I applied the ink, I haven't put enough ink on the roller, and that's probably because it was new, or maybe I've not applied enough pressure. So I'll just do one more print because again I don't want to waste my fabric, because I'm not completely happy with that print. So for each print you take up more ink again, and you do the rolling bit with your roller, and then you roll it onto your lino cut, making sure that you do those vertical lines and horizontal lines. And I don't think I had quite enough ink. Making sure I catch all the edges. And this time, I think I'm just going to apply a little bit more pressure than I did the previous time. The whole printing process is about pressure, even the amount of pressure that you use on your roller when you're applying the ink. If you're too heavy-handed, you'll get blotchy prints. If you're too light-handed, you get faded prints. So pressure is one of the most important things in the whole printing process. So let's see how this one came out, and you can see that's much better. So I've gotten good coverage there. So I look at that now and I think, okay, I'm ready to try this on fabric. So now I'm ready to print onto my fabric, which I've ironed. If you have creases on your fabric, they will print. So it's really important to have your fabric as smooth as possible. I lay that onto my background, and this is where printing on fabric is different than printing on paper. Normally with paper, you would place the paper on top of your lino cut and apply pressure. But because fabric is soft, it actually sits in the areas that you've cut away. It's like it almost sucks the fabric into those lines, and you don't want that happening. So what you actually do is you place the lino on top of the fabric. So I'll just roll again, more ink onto my roller. And here it's really important to make sure that you don't have any blobs or anything, and also that you don't push the ink into those background areas, because fabric is soft and it will print areas that perhaps you don't want printed. So the amount of pressure that you apply to your roller is important, and it's a matter of practice. You just get a feel for it. Probably the first couple of prints that you do won't be totally successful, but you need to watch out. If there's blobs, that means you've applied too much ink, and you can see I'm going around the edges. If the print is too light, you've probably not applied enough ink. So again, I place my lino cut down onto that, and I use my super tool. And with fabric, it's really important to apply quite a lot of pressure, and particularly to the edges. So I probably apply more pressure when I'm printing on fabric than when I'm printing on paper. And actually, if you do a lot of printing, it's quite a vigorous workout. But this is so that I get really good coverage, and I'm really pressing down on that bottle. And I'm also holding my tile down, or my lino cut down, very well, because I don't want it moving, because then I'll get a smudge on my final print. So let's see how that printed on fabric. I'm hoping it will be good. And just remember, the print on fabric will always be a bit lighter than on paper, and that's because fabric is soft and it sucks up the ink. So I'll just put that back down. I'm pretty happy with that print. So now we'll move on to the final stage, which is the exciting one, stage 6, printing ideas and techniques.